death, the end of all things. But the dream is not over. My dream, yours. Now, run.
We can finally talk about Marathon. I have been lucky enough to get the opportunity to head out to Bungie HQ a couple of times and play some early builds of Marathon. And now that Bungie has officially revealed some gameplay and the launch date of the game, I can finally dive into my experience with it. A few disclaimers before we hop into the video though. First of all, this is not a paid video. I can and will tell you exactly how I feel about the game. This is not sponsored, not paid. This is just me. The NDA has lifted and I can tell you how I felt about playing Marathon. Secondly, this is footage of me playing courtesy of Bungie. They recorded one of the sessions. I'll probably be looping some of the trailers in this video as well, but any of the actual gameplay is me playing from this playtest, and it is alpha footage, so that's important to remember. It can and will change. This is an alpha build, but kudos to them for sending me this footage. And thirdly, obviously all of this is going to be my opinion. You might want something different out of games. You might like extraction shooters or hate them. Ultimately, this is just kind of my vibe and my opinion. And if we disagree, that is totally okay. So what I'm going to do in this video is go through an overview of what Marathon is, talk about some of the things I really like about the game, talk about some of the things I really dislike about the game and the feedback I gave them while I was there, and talk about what I feel about the longevity of the game as it stands now. This is probably going to be a pretty dense discussion, so I'm going to try to timestamp as many of the parts of this conversation as possible. So if you're looking for something specific, check that out down below. So by now you probably know that Marathon is a PvPvE extraction shooter releasing on console and PC at the same time on September 23rd of this year, and it is based on the original Marathon IP. Marathon was a series of games that came out in the late 90s made by Bungie, and they're reviving that IP with this new game. On the surface, it's a pretty standard extraction shooter. You infiltrate into a map, loot, PvP, and extract. It is instance mapped, so no persistency and no open world, and there are anywhere between 12 and 18 total players. There is lots of PvP, there are quests, progression, AI, bosses, loot, and all of the things that you would come to expect out of an extraction shooter.
Oh yeah. Yep. Broke one. They have no idea. Hit another one. Downed him. Yep, I see the other one. It's a glitch. He's blue shield. I hit him once. He got the one up. He got the one up. I re-knocked him. Down the glitch.
Deploying barricade.
Down them all again and again.
Now, Marathon is definitely putting its own spin on the genre and trying to create something that feels fresh and exciting. One of the ways they're doing that are through the runners. Now, there was a lot of news and press and leaks back in the day about this game becoming a hero shooter, and I don't know what the technical definition of hero shooter is anymore. But yes, in this game, you choose from a list of specific characters that have their own movesets and abilities. I used to hate this idea, and originally when I came to Bungie, I was really not excited about it. But I will say that the more I played Marathon, and to be honest, playing other games like Delta Force really helped soften my opinion on this and helped me realize how much fun team composition and build crafting can be. I wouldn't say I'm in love with the idea. I definitely like thinking of a world where anyone can do or be anything they want in Marathon, and you don't have to worry about having to use, the meta operator or runner. But it is one of those things that can really cut both ways. When balanced poorly, it can make games feel samey because every team is running the same team composition. But on the flip side, when it's balanced well, it can make things feel really fresh because no two fights are the same. For example, in Escape from Tarkov, high-level PvP is just jiggle peeking right-hand peaks, then rotating and repositioning to jiggle peek another right-hand peak to rotate and reposition to do it again and again and again until someone headshots the other person. I do like the thought of having some agency of changing up a fight and having the ability to do so and exploit my opponent's weakness because of what runner they're using and what runner I'm using. So far, I feel like the runners in Marathon are pretty balanced, but ultimately on the hero shooter thing, I'm definitely not going to be able to tell you how to feel about it. I know a lot of people are really going to hate it, and I honestly understand that. I was there too, but if I am being 100% honest with you, the more I played, the more I kind of liked it and liked how different it felt to my main game, which is Escape from Tarkov. So far, the runners feel pretty good. They feel pretty balanced. We got to play 4 of the 6 that will be available at launch. I focused on this most recent playtest on one, Locust, who is the kind of soldier runner. His passive abilities are a tactical sprint that consumes a little bit extra stamina and a dash that he can use by pressing spacebar twice that you can dash in a horizontal direction, forward, back, left, or right. His abilities were a shield that you can pull out that absorbs damage and kind of these missile racks that come up from his shoulders and do extra damage. The missile racks are not free kills though. You actually have to do sustained damage to an enemy for those missile racks to fire. So you still got to hit your shots. It's like an extra DPS button when you hit it. The other ones we got to play were Glitch, which is kind of like the agile verticality sniper, Void, which is kind of your stealth runner, and Blackbird, which is more of a recon runner. All of the runner have like 6 or 7 different stats that I think are slightly different depending on what runner you pick, and that can also be altered with things that you find in the raid. Some of the stats are like agility, which is movement speed and jump height. Heat capacity is basically their version of stamina, stuff like that, which is a great kind of segue into the second thing that Marathon is doing to really set itself apart, and that is their build crafting. Build crafting in a game like Escape from Tarkov is really just using the objectively best ammo or armor or attachments that you have. There isn't a lot of personality or variance. You might like one gun over another, but there's always a meta build for that gun or a meta scope to use or something. In Marathon, they're trying to champion you creating a runner that plays exactly how you want them to play. Outside of modifying guns, there is a lot that you can modify about a run. There are 5 implant slots. 2 are core implants, which are like general buffs that you can get to your character. You find these as loot. For example, at one point I was running one that when I had no shields, I moved significantly faster. And I was running one where my movement speed and how fast I ready weapons was increased after using a shield charge. Then there are 3 limb implants. One is legs, one is arms, and I think one is chest. For example, one dramatically increased my stamina, but decreased my ADS speed and the handling of my guns. There are ones that increase your revive speed or resistances or ability recharge rate, stuff like that. Additionally, there is build crafting in the backpacks. In addition to just standard backpacks you can find, there are backpacks that also slowly passively reload your stowed weapon. So not the one in your hands, but if you had to shoot one and swap to another one, the backpack will slowly refill that ammo. And other backpacks that made using health and shield consumables a little bit faster. So some cool stuff there as well. For guns, there are your pretty standard gun modifications. There isn't a whole lot to this system, and honestly, I think that's a good thing. With all the implants and bags and stuff like that, if there were thousands and thousands of weapons attachments, that would be a little too much. So it feels good, it feels in a good spot. Purple or gold modifications add additional stats to the gun. For example, I had one where if I was below half health, breaking an enemy's shields restored my shields. These are obviously rare ones, but they add extra kind of bonuses to your gun. And then beyond all of that, there was a really cool vintage mechanic. Almost any piece of actual gear can be vintage. And when you find something that's vintage, that means every time you extract with it, the value that you can get for selling that to the trader increases. So you find a piece of gear and you use it, and you can end up getting a pretty big payday if you extract with this thing multiple times. But it creates some really cool opportunities because it incentivizes you to kind of push your luck and gamble and try to get one more raid. But if you kill an enemy runner that has a piece of vintage gear on them, you get that payday. It doesn't reset. So if somebody had something that was now worth 2K instead of 300, you can take it off them and sell it for 2K. It's a really cool mechanic. All of this definitely gives a good sense of agency over how you want to play and gives you the ability to really hone into the specifics of what your playstyle is. It also means that there's a lot of gear-based loot, which definitely adds to the extraction shooter sense of urgency. It can be overwhelming at first, but I think overwhelming in a good way. In an extraction shooter, you want there to be a lot of information, but you want that information to kind of call you and hook you into wanting to learn more. And I think Marathon does a good job. So with that overview of what Marathon is and what they're trying to do differently, I'm going to talk about some of the things I really liked about the game. I personally love the setting and the aesthetic of this game. I love the vibe and the art direction. You can follow the art directors on Twitter and see a lot of their inspirations from a lot of old anime and a lot of other sci-fi. It feels very intentional. It doesn't feel like something an algorithm spat out. It feels like it has a vision and a direction. I love that it is not Milsim. We've had a whole lot of that recently, but it also doesn't look like any of the stars. Starfield, Star Wars, Star Citizen, Star Trek. All of those are cool games or universes with cool aesthetics, but I love that this feels fresh and new. I know it won't be for everybody. Some people already hate it. That's totally fine, but I love it. I also love the deep sense of lore. There's a lot of narrative being spun into the gameplay and into the raids, and I really like that. Games like Tarkov, I know there's a lot of lore, but it is almost exclusively provided to the player through walls of text or videos that you have to watch outside the game. I love that in Marathon, the world that you're inhabiting is not made for you. It was made for the people that came before you, and you're figuring out what happened to them as you go. The gunplay feels very fun. Bungie definitely know how to make a good shooter game, and this game feels tight and fun to shoot things, which is always great. The dynamic events in the raids also feel really good. This was something I really liked about Delta Force, was the amount of things that happen in a raid that are basically elective PvP catalysts. If you hear a contract being taken in the distance and you want PvP, well, there's your dinner bell, you push for it. If you're a solo or you're a squad trying to avoid PvP or quests, well, then that is an alarm for you, and you know to path maybe around that area out of harm's way. Obviously, survival is never guaranteed, but I like that there are these little things. Marathon has these two cool in-raid events or missions or puzzles that can help create another level of the dynamic feeling raids. There is no secure container in this game, and I really like that. I honestly don't know why, but I do. I guess I've seen what happened to Escape from Tarkov with all their containers, and a lot of other extraction shooters have even monetized their secure containers. I kind of like the simplicity of just every run is a fresh run, and I didn't feel myself needing it. I didn't feel like I couldn't progress without it in this game because of the way the quests were designed. I really like it. I like the way that they do keys as well. You got to find the keys in raid, and they are one-time use. And to me, that makes it much more dynamic because you probably aren't running the same key over and over again to get all your uses out of it. And if you hit keyed rooms, they can actually be juiced full of loot. Tarkov has a problem where, because all of the keys are purchasable on the flea market and keys have upwards of 40 uses, and because you're hitting multiple keys in the same run, think about going to a shoreline resort run and hitting 15 to 20 keys. They have to balance those rooms such that you're not leaving with 30 or 40 million rubles every single time you go. But if you only have a couple keys and you're only hitting one keyed room a raid or every couple raids, they can really dial up the juice and make finding keys an event. It makes finding the keys feel better, it makes using the keys feel better, and it makes taking the keys off of dead players feel better. I really like it. There is no flea market or player market in Marathon, and I really like that. If you want something, you got to go find it. It just feels like that was always the spirit of extraction shooters. And last but not least, it's fun. We're going to talk about longevity and some of the things I don't like about the game, but it's important to remember to use that as a metric when we try new games. It's fun. Every time I played it, I wanted to play more.
Oh, I see him. On ping. 2 glitches. One down.
All right, if you thought this was a glaze fest, that definitely ends here. I want to talk about some of the things I don't like about the game and some of the feedback I gave, but I'm not going to talk about bugs really. That's kind of what an alpha and a beta are for. I'm going to talk more about game design choices and game design philosophy. Like we said before, Marathon is a fun shooter game, but I feel like it's missing an identity as an extraction shooter game. There's no dispute, at least in my opinion, that Escape from Tarkov is kind of the king of extraction shooters. Now, and listen to me closely here, that does not mean I want this game to turn into Escape from Tarkov. That is actually, hilariously, the last thing I want for this game. However, I do spend a lot of time thinking about what the core principles of Tarkov are, underneath the hardcore milsim realism, and what makes this game so addicting to play. The game has obviously had its rough patches, but hundreds of thousands of players come back every single wipe. Why? And what is it that other extraction shooters have missed? Because none of them have really seemed to be able to capture a large audience for the long term. First and foremost, I think it needs to be a dopamine factory. Extraction shooters are, by design, constantly ripping things from you. I would guess most players have a less than 50% survival rate in Tarkov. It takes the gear that you spent the time to get, so the reward for that has to be that when you win, it feels good. And the loot economy is set up in a way that when you win, it kind of fills you with that dopamine. I said this to the devs quite a few times, 1 win needs to cover 100 losses. Now obviously that's an exaggeration, I don't mean that literally, but the point is to say, if you play Tarkov, what are the raids that you dream about? How good did that first solo squad wipe feel? How many times have your hands been physically shaking while you were extracting from a raid? I still remember some of the most formative raids from thousands of hours of playtime ago, and every once in a while Tarkov can still get my heart rate up and get my hands shaking. That is, in my opinion, required from an extraction shooter in order for it to thrive, and that comes from walking a very thin line. If too many raids are those jackpot raids, then they don't feel good or special, and if not enough of those raids are, well, then you just feel like you are constantly getting beaten and berated by a game and you're not having fun. The ever-present possibility that this next raid is going to be the raid keeps you going. And I think that that is where Marathon struggles right now. The game is definitely hard, PvP can be tough, and the AI will definitely add a lot of pressure. You will die a lot in Marathon, but right now the wins just don't really feel like they cover the losses emotionally. One of the things is that the backpacks, in my opinion, are way too small in Marathon. There are no pockets or rigs in this game, which I actually don't mind because it helps simplify looting, but the backpacks do not make up for that space. This is a core part of why I think the wins don't feel good enough. You don't really get the opportunity to min-max the loot enough. If you're a solo and you wipe a 3-man, you are probably leaving 80% of that loot behind, and that just doesn't feel good. I harped on this a lot while I was over there, and hopefully they make some changes to the backpack space. Stash space or vault space was also very small, meaning that you couldn't really be a gremlin and hoard loot, which is my favorite thing to do in Tarkov. You couldn't really feel like you were stacking up gear for future runs. It felt like 1 or 2 deaths and your stash was empty, and after one good run, everything was full and you just had to sell everything that you brought out. This is something, however, that they actually patted me on the shoulder and told me that they were adjusting before we left, so that is exciting. Additionally, I think the loot needs more dopamine in Marathon. There are valuables that are not gear related, things that are just little treasures you sell for money, but they just don't really feel satisfying to find or sell. There is no like LEDX or Bitcoin equivalent that you're hoping to find, and I think the game would be better if it had a few of those. Definitely not too many. I think Delta Force went the route that there were too many. There were so many red items that were basically just like infinite money buttons, and those items need to be rare for sure, but something that spikes that tension when you find it is huge. I think little things like this go a long way into creating the type of tension and tension relief that you need in an extraction shooter. Another thing I gave a lot of feedback on was the gun modification system. You currently can't really take mods off of guns at all, meaning if you find a mod you want, you gotta take the whole gun with you and work around it. They talked about a system where maybe you can only take mods off out of raid, but then you have to pay for it. Also, replacing mods on guns destroys the original mod. And this whole thing, in my opinion, it might be the worst gameplay decision that they've made in the whole game. It's important to know why they're doing it. They want these big kind of juicer moments with the guns, where maybe you go into a locked room and you find a decked out sniper with gold and purple mods, and then they want that to translate to bag pressure, where you have to make calls on, do I want to drop a lot of this loot that I have, or do I want to take this gun with me? So from that perspective, I kind of understand it, but I just vehemently disagree with how it plays out. I think it basically betrays the entire thesis of the game. It stands in the face of all that build crafting that we talked about before. That plus the small bags plus the small stash basically completely stonewalls you from any build crafting. You are constantly leaving behind all the things that the game wants you to explore. If it comes down to me progressing on a quest or getting a gun out or something like that, I am always going to choose progression, which means I am just constantly leaving behind all these cool items, and I think it should be the opposite. You should be hoarding all of those things. You should have the freedom to hoard all those things so that when you die, you're maybe encouraged to experiment, try a new gun modification or try a new core implant that maybe will ultimately change how you play the game in the future. It completely punishes experimentation with the weapons. You are just not able to like try new optics or try new sights to see how things feel, which means you're always just going to end up taking the exact thing you know you like. And it kind of just betrays the gamer lizard brain of modifying weapons. I think that a lot of people bought Escape from Tarkov because of the gunsmith system, and I just think that modifying weapons is something that gamers have come to expect out of shooter games, and especially extraction shooter games, and I think people will be disappointed in the current system. They were listening, they were very open to ideas, so I really hope they change this system. Additionally, there was no proximity chat, no VoIP in the game, and in my opinion, this is huge. I think you absolutely need it for the emergent gameplay moments. I know people are always going to be toxic, but I think in games like this, the pros definitely outweigh the cons. And then lastly, this is a little bit of a rant, but I personally feel like squad fill is ruining extraction shooters. Squad fill meaning that by default, if you're a solo and you queue up into a raid, it is going to put you in a 3-man team with 2 strangers. It is on by default and no one will turn it off. You have the ability to, but in my experience, if it's on, no one's going to turn it off. Turning it off feels like you are making a choice. You are choosing to play at a disadvantage by playing the way that you want to play. Squads of 3 are great. I like that that's the max squad size, and I totally understand if the game was meant to be played in squads. That is totally fine, but let the gameplay dictate that. By putting it on the player to wrangle up a squad, it provides a much more even distribution of players and squad sizes. Even if the average ends up being 3, that's totally okay. That's kind of how Tarkov is. A lot of people end up playing in squads, but they're not forced to. When squad fill is on, the community always ends up demanding a solo queue, and that always ends up having a whole set of problems on its own. If they don't do a solo queue, the solo players are frustrated, and if they do, they have to rebalance the runners, rebalance the economy, rebalance the spawns, and it always ends up being a mess. Also, making the squad size almost always 3 reduces fights down to super predictable actions. It kind of feels like Apex. Get a pick, push the numbers advantage, that's it. That's how every fight turns out to be. A core part of games like Escape from Tarkov is I don't know if he has a buddy or not. Do I think his buddy is watching his body? Not knowing if the fight is over adds tension, and always knowing when the fight is over because you know you got the third guy kind of gets stale. Let me know in the comments what you think about this one. I've been marinating on this opinion for a while since it seems like all the extraction shooters are going with squad fill now and it seems to be a trend. I know there is a flip side to this. I know it helps solo players queue with squads so they're not always getting slammed by squads. But by trying to help the solo players, it makes it much worse for people that continue to want to play solo because they are basically guaranteeing that they're going to get slammed by squads, and those players end up always wanting a solo queue anyway. So maybe something like a built-in looking for group system would be a good middle ground. So that was kind of a lot of the feedback that I gave them. Ultimately, I think that they have all the tools they need to find their own identity and make a great extraction shooter. There is nothing huge in the game, nothing huge that the game needs that I thought that just was completely absent from the game. They have everything, they have all the tools in the tool belt, they just need to use them and tweak it until they find their identity as an extraction shooter. Now, lastly, the most asked question I get anytime I play any new game is something like, how long will it last, or what's the longevity of this game? And I understand that question to a point because a lot of us have spent hundreds or thousands of hours playing whatever your main game is and wants to know if you're going to be supported if you try something new. But at the end of the day, there's obviously just no real way to know right at the launch of a game if a game has thousands of hours worth of content. I will say though that there is a lot of progression and a lot of content planned. There are 6 total factions in the game, and each of them give their own quests and have their own upgrade trees that affect things like runner stats, stash size, and what is available to purchase from the shop. And there seems to be a lot of content to work through right at the launch, which is good. Also, they plan to support this game through seasons, meaning every 3 months we'll have a major update that will include new content, new runners, maybe new maps or map adjustments, new events, new lore, potentially even new factions, and new community interaction. There will also be a ranked or rated mode, so there will probably be ranks to grind if you are into that sort of thing. We don't have a whole lot of information on this at this time. The game also has really cool endgame content, certain maps that are almost like if you mixed Tarkov's Labs map with a Destiny or MMO style raid. Lots of puzzles, lots of PvP, and tons of loot. They are really, really cool. And the Marathon lore runs deep, so they have so many avenues at their disposal to add more content. The game will also wipe with each season. I know that will be divisive and controversial, but where it stands right now, I think that's a good decision. They've already talked about wanting to change progression every season to a degree so that you are not coming back to the exact same grind each season, which is really nice. And they are working on cosmetics or similar things that you can earn each season so that you always have something to work towards and ways to show off what you've achieved in past seasons. From a high-level view, it seems like they have a lot of content and a lot of plans to support the game. Ultimately, games have to be fun first and foremost, and then be supported for the long term. So that is my full info dump on what I know about Marathon. I could talk about the intricacies of this game for hours, but hopefully by now you have a good understanding of what the game is and a trust that with the time I was given, I tried to give good, actionable feedback that best represented the most amount of players, not just myself. I am super excited to see what they're cooking up, but as always, it's probably best we keep our expectations tempered and just see how it all unfolds. If you're interested in Marathon, I will surely be covering the game more on this channel as we get close to launch. Thank you so much for watching and checking out this video. If you liked it, think about dropping a like, commenting down below, or subscribing to the channel for more content like this. I do stream almost every single day on Twitch and here on YouTube. Those links will be down below. And like I said, lots more Marathon content to come. Thank you again for stopping by, and I will definitely see y'all on the next one.
Rip my treasures.